Okay, so in this video, we're going to start talking about the IA or the internal assessment. This is um, this is just going to be a very brief introduction to what the IA is, and we're going to spend the next few weeks of class time working on the IA. Okay, so again, IA stands for internal assessment. Um, so we're going to spend a little bit of time up front talking about the rubric, the grading of the IA, learning more about uncertainties, experimental design, creating graphs, data tables, data analysis, all of those skills that you'll need to do your IA. And then you'll have the next few weeks of class time to determine a research question, get it approved, design your experiment, carry out your experiment, and then collect those results and use them to write your IA. The deadline for this assignment is going to be set at a later date. I am going to break it up into multiple stages, including grading some sample IAs, um, doing your brainstorm activity that's in Canvas that has to be approved by me before you can start. You're going to have to type out your introduction, your rough draft, and then your final draft. Most likely, the final draft will be due sometime in March, um, and um, the rough draft will probably be due sometime towards uh, the end of this month or the beginning of this month, or the beginning of March, depending on how things are going. But I will set those dates at a later time. Okay. I would recommend that once you get into it, try to do a little bit of work on your IA each day, whether it's planning, whether it's typing something up, whether it's collecting data, thinking about your evaluation. The IA can take a while to get started because you have to have an approved research question that I have to agree to before you can begin. And so once that gets done, I would recommend you get started as soon as possible. Okay, so let's talk about what the IA is. Okay, now um, the internal assessment for science, at least for SL physics, counts for 20% of your final IB grade. Okay, now it's very possible that if the IB decides that we are not going to do sit for exams this year, that it might end up counting for a greater percentage of your final IB grade, which is why it's so important that you do a good job on it. Okay, the final result of this investigation is going to be a 6 to 12 page report that details your investigation, your research, your data collection and analysis, evaluation, and conclusion. And typically, the way the IA works is that you will complete the assignment and you will give it to me to grade, and I will grade it according to the IB rubric. And then normally what happens is that I will send some samples of my graded work to the IB and they will regrade it themselves to see how closely my grading correspond to their grading and that then use that to kind of give everyone else a grade. Now, last year what happened because of everything with COVID is they actually asked us to submit everybody's IA so that not only did I give a grade for everybody, but they regraded all of my work as well, just to make sure everything was um, as close to accurate as possible. Okay, and so do kind of keep in mind that the IA this year might be a little bit more important than it has been in the past. Okay, so what do you do for your IA? So the purpose of the IA is to basically determine a research question that your entire investigation is going to be based around. Okay, so you're going to figure out what you want your research question to be, and we'll talk more about that in just a sec. You're going to write about the explanation of your topic, design and carry out an experiment to investigate that research question. Okay, after you collect the data from the experiment, then you're going to analyze and graph the data and then state a conclusion that is justified by that data. Okay, now keep in mind that as you're designing the experiment for your IA, your goal is to investigate the relationship between two variables. Okay, you don't need to come up with a hypothesis and test it. Okay, this is not, middle school science fair or whatever. Okay, you're just trying to investigate the relationship between two variables. Okay, so just to give you some ideas, here are some names of some previous IAs that have been done, and I know that there's a lot of different topics or a lot of different research questions on this page. Okay, so feel free to pause it here if you need to look at these some more. Um, some of these might not seem like they have anything to do directly with the IB curriculum. I would say for the most part, as far as the IA is concerned, the IB cares a lot more about your ability to develop a research question, design an experiment, and collect data and then analyze the data rather than it corresponding to like specific topics in the IB curriculum. So for example, how does the number of coffee filters affect the time it takes them to fall to the ground? That does have to do with physics. Tangentially, it has to do with, air resistance and whatnot. Okay, but that was a really simple kind of investigation that really just tested the ability of the student to design the experiment carefully and collect the data. Okay, some of these could be carried out using equipment we have at school. Some of them would require you to get equipment on your own, which people have done in the past. Um, I wouldn't necessarily like go around stealing some of these because some of these IA topics are not good at all. Um, and honestly, as long as you have an approved research question, the quality of your IA really has more to do with your work ethic and your ability to carry out your investigation to its maximum potential rather than the topic itself. Okay, so in other words, if you take one research question and give it to two different students, one student might get like a perfect score and the other might, get a really bad score. Okay, so it's not just about the research question being amazing. It comes down to your work quality. Okay, so um, the IA in science is graded based off of 5 different criteria. That's personal engagement, which is about 8% of your grade, exploration, analysis, and evaluation, which are all about 25% of your grade, and then communication, which is 17. For your convenience in Canvas, I have included the same rubric that I'm going to give you, or that I'm going to use to grade your IA. It is the official IB grading rubric. I encourage you to take a look at that in Canvas. In the next class, we're going to be grading some sample IAs, and so you need to become familiar with that rubric, especially since ultimately that's what I'm going to assess your IA on. Okay, so I would encourage you, when you're done with this video, go look through that rubric and kind of familiarize yourself with what are the 5 different criteria and their subcategories. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to use that same rubric to grade some sample IAs. We're going to talk more about each of these criteria in more detail, and then I'm going to give you time, probably for the next few days actually, to work on getting an approved research question. Okay, as always, please let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys in the next video.